Hey, Professor Keena. This is Patrick McElrath. Um, First and foremost, I must say that I'm really enjoying the class. Um, it's a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, especially when I started reading that first book and how big it was and how small the print was. Coming out of Dr. Weitzel's classes, I wasn't sure what this might be like, but I'm really enjoying it and I'm finding it really useful for the ministry that we're doing in Detroit and what I'm learning down there as an intern. Um, so thank you for that. Um, I also really like the idea of being able to do a video response once in a while. I think it's just easier on the mind for someone like me who enjoys speaking. I find it um, a lot easier just to kind of have some notes and be able to talk, and so I also appreciate that. Um, so this is my video response for the first kind of half of the papers or questions for, I think it might be 3.3. So I just finished watching the movie, the documentary God Grew Tired of Us, and also checking out the website, the blog posts with the Wesleyan response as a church in general for their response towards immigration and immigration laws. And so the first question that you asked is, how has the church addressed immigration more as a political topic or as an area of human need? And to what extent has the church's involvement been appropriate? That's a really good question. After watching the film and kind of taking some notes, um, it was interesting to watch and listen in the movie at the times when like people from our country, whether they were Caucasian white Americans or Indian or African American, whatever it might be. But in the times in the film when specifically the cops were called and the boys were asked um, to not walk around in so many in groups, big groups, it was kind of freaking people out, especially store owners. And I think that that's quite sad. What I had written down was that in terms of like the political aspect of it, I would say that it's more political in America. Maybe removing the church for a second, but actually no, including the church. I think that it's more political in terms of immigration, people coming to this country. I think the idea of missions in general excites the church. I think the idea of missions overseas to the church is a huge human need. Sometimes even like the biggest human need in the church, something that the church in general strides together to work heavily on overseas. I think that the idea of missions in our own backyard is a new concept, but one that's definitely worth pursuing. I see that firsthand in Detroit, where I can be driving down the street and I can be in Midtown with Wayne State University, and it's beautiful. And then the next street that I hit is like a third world country, and there's people outside, and it reminds me of the Philippines, and it's sad. But as a church and as a people group, I think that we forget about our own backyards and we put such a focus on overseas missions. Um, but by that, I think that we forget about people here in America. I think that really what happens is maybe we'll have interactions with immigrants, or maybe we'll have interactions with people who are less fortunate than us in our cities, in our states, in this country. But I think that people see them and they probably assume that, oh, they're good because it's America. That's the kind of the interaction. That's kind of what I felt when I watched the film about the Lost Boys. Was people would see them and they'd see that they're different, but their initial thoughts were probably, oh, well, they're here in America, so it's okay. They're good. In the reality, just sitting down and asking them questions. I remember the one boy said, and just I can find it in all my notes, but he was talking about how no one's friendly in America, and so I think as a church, it's super important in these next few years with immigration laws, illegal immigrants, with all of those political issues coming forth, that we kind of take a role and a response in this. and not so much focus as much on the outside as we do in our own backyards. Um, it's funny that I had a friend in college, whose name was Bol Duat. I went to Spring Arbor University, and he was actually a lost boy, and he was, um, I'm pretty sure I saw him in this film. If not him, I know that I saw boys who are in pictures with him on his Facebook page, and it was cool to kind of already have a general understanding of the film, but just learning so much more. It's a film that I wish I would have known, I wish I would have watched back when I was in college, just to be able to relate to him so much more. And I realize that I'm already way over my time, so I apologize. But really quickly, just to touch on the second question, um, how might the North American church benefit from friendship and partnership with immigrants? Um, and what I wrote down was like, man, the film was so good, and those guys are awesome, and I wish that I could have more interaction with a group of people like that. Um, the simplicity that they carry, but the deep-rooted faith, especially when the one man was talking about Christmas, and how Christmas in America is so much different than Christmas in the Sudan and in Kenya, when all they have is just to celebrate their life and to celebrate Jesus. And he didn't understand why we went to all this length to put up Christmas trees and do all this stuff when it was really about Jesus. And so I really appreciate their simplicity and their faith. And I think that's one of the areas that we could desperately learn, even as Christians in America, is the simplicity. The simplicity is the simplicity. Um, One of the other notes that I took is, I love how the one boy at the end was talking about how he was walking down the street and he saw a woman crying, and he watched people just walk by, walk by, walk by. We're so busy, we're so caught up in what we're doing here. I feel like in America and Western civilization in general, even Eastern in Europe and times I've spent there, people are so caught up in themselves and the selfishness. I love how he went over and he just asked, "Hey, what's wrong?" Just a simple question, um, but it's because of what they would have done back in their own culture as a community, loving people. Um, I feel like in general, to sum it up, the mindset of helping needs to be more live in our church. These guys came over here and they got jobs, and they just gave everything back to their families. They lived on literally nothing, but because they came from nothing, what they were living on here, which seems like nothing to us, was actually, you know, quite a lot to them in the beginning. But I love their consistency in serving. I love their consistency in love. I think it's so easy to become part of the culture you're living in, and so to see these guys 3, 4, 5 years uh, after they were living here, still living in the same apartments, you know, still driving the cheaper vehicles, still making their beds in the morning. They had a sense of thankfulness and gratitude that they lived their lives with. And you could totally tell that it affected their countenance and the way that they interacted with people. So I really enjoyed the movie. I really enjoyed the film. It's definitely one that I'll be watching again. Definitely makes me want to get more involved with something like this. I don't know. I don't know what we can do, but definitely makes me want to get more involved and at least do more research on the subject. It definitely makes me excited to go back out into the streets, into the communities of Detroit, Michigan, here where I'm living, and just like get to know people, just ask questions and listen and love. So yeah, I'm sorry it went over, but yeah, I'm passionate about that, and it was really neat. So thanks.